Everybody. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about chart markers. So I did a presentation at Dreamforce, the Einstein Analytics Ask the Experts. During the session, Akshay Ahuja presented a little bit of info on chart markers. He said to me, a lot of people don't even know what chart markers do or even that they exist. And I 100% agree, and he did a great presentation on some of the things you can do. And it wasn't a week after that, I had a question from somebody that said, hey, can chart markers be dynamic? And I was like, of course they can be dynamic. It's Einstein Analytics after all. So what I wanted to do is kind of show you a video. First, I'll give you an overview of what chart markers are, and then I'll walk you through a couple bindings use cases. And thinking about it, it's actually kind of a really good bindings tutorial. So if you're not too familiar with bindings, this will be a good getting started. What I wanted to do is kind of show you 3 use cases, and they're going to go from really basic to more advanced, and I'll walk you through them as we go. So here goes. So let me show you the chart marker feature. So we originally developed this, and I can't take credit for it. The PM at the time was Kim Schwar, did an amazing job, even though it's my team now. The thought was that we wanted to add a way that you can draw attention, particularly on a map. We did the work for the map, and then we said, hey, this kind of applies to really any visualization. Because right now you have to hover in order to see more information, more details, but we wanted to have some affordance where we can tell people, hey, something interesting happened here, or something's going on. And it could be static, like, hey, a particular day, something that happened, or it could be dynamic. So what you would do to set that up is you go into the settings here, and there's a chart markers section, and then you just click on edit chart markers. So now I'm in this marker editing mode, and I can just click on the data point where I want to associate. And once I click on that, now I'm configuring that. So I can choose what I want to show, very similar to how you configure the tooltip. And I can even add custom text if I want to kind of add a little background or reason why I'm calling attention here. And you can even kind of collapse it by default or make it blink to draw the attention in, or add a little bit of color so that you can have a little bit of affordance to what's going on here. So I'm going to make this red, saying, hey, this is something bad happening, maybe something that you should pay attention to. But you could go in many different directions. So let's back out of that, and now what I'll show you is what this actually does in the background. So here in the background, you're going to see this markers section. So this is in the widget itself. And then here's the row. The row is where it's anchored to. And then the properties. So you see the colors that we set up and the dimensions, measures, right, everything right here. So this will come in handy once we want to go and bind to this later. So I'll hit done there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to my dashboard, because we want to go ahead and we're going to start by making this dynamic. So I clipped it to my dashboard, and I'll just drag this onto the canvas here. So right now I have one chart marker, and let's actually go, and I'm going to add a toggle up here, and we'll start setting this up. So let's drag this around here, and we'll set up our toggle. Now, once you're going to start doing bindings, the easiest thing to do is to use a static step. And of course, you don't want to create all that JSON from scratch. So of course, you always go and use the static step UI right here. So I'm going to create a static step with custom values. And let's choose. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania. So I'm going to add value for that. And then I move to DC, so I'll add a marker for DC, and I currently reside in California, so we'll add a value for that. So 3 states here, and we'll go ahead and create that static step. So now I've got a toggle, Pennsylvania, DC, California, and of course it does nothing at this point because we haven't wired it up. And this is hardwired to California, so we want to change that. So let's Command E to go into our bindings, and remember that the widgets are down towards the bottom here. So I've got my marker right here. So here's that California. So we want to replace that with our standard binding syntax. So we'll go cell. Now we need the name of the step. So see our pillbox is connected to static one. So I'll copy that and we'll say static one dot selection. And we want to get the 0th row. And of course, the token name that it always adds in that is a value. And of course, we've got to escape these double quotes. Close that. And we'll say as string. So here we go. We'll save that. Now, the other thing is, remember that we didn't do anything for the null case here. So we always want to assume that something is selected. So if we're going to go ahead and assume that something is selected, then what we should do is go ahead and make sure that something has to be selected. So we'll just change this to single select required. That means there also has to be at least one and only one thing selected. And let's try it out. So now when I click this toggle, the chart marker that's visible is going to change on the map. So I could use this to kind of have users walk through, do different things, and kind of call attention to different focal points on the map. So you may want to add other values to this toggle. Kind of affects multiple things, but there's a really simple binding use case that you can get done. Now let's go a little bit more advanced. Use case number 2. Let's say that you actually want to change a group of these. So I may want to set multiple states or multiple things. So let's go back to my map right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a couple different chart markers. So let's go back and again add my favorites here. And I'm going to set the color so we can standardize. And it's really hard to find DC. So what I'll do is I'll just go and I'm going to set Virginia right there. And we'll set that other same standard color here. All right, so now I've got 3 chart markers set up. And what I'm going to do is grab that JSON. So here we have markers, and you can see that this is an array, and I've got marker 1, marker 2, and we're going to scroll down a little bit. All right, and I'm going to copy that JSON. So we've copied that. We're back in our dashboard. Let's edit it open again. And now let's go to our static 1. So these are steps. So this was our static 1 configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to change this so that it could set multiple things at a time. So first things first, let's add a none value. So I'm just going to put an empty array in here, and we'll call this none. And this one, let's call this my places. And I'm going to paste that array that we had before. So V, Control V here, and now you can see that I've got this list of states right in there. Now you could easily do this with multiple, but let's just, for simplicity, I'm just going to delete the second section. Now you could copy and paste any group, any set of groups, so that I could make this multiple different sets. And there we go. So that is how we set up the static step. Now let's go back to our binding. So remember again, we've got markers. So what I actually want to do is I am going to copy this string, and then I'm going to paste right here because I want this to evaluate to the entire markers. Now I think I need to make this object because right now the value isn't actually a string value, it's returning a JSON array, which is an object. We're still doing static one.selection, and we're still getting that 0th row there. So let's try this out. Done. And we're going to have to preview. There. So now I can have an empty array of chart markers. I can have a set of 3, any number of chart markers. So each state could be any, just all you have to do is copy and paste those arrays, and you can set up just multiple states where you're calling out a bunch of different things to a user. So that's use case number 2, where we have multiple dynamic things. The third use case that I wanted to go over is having something that is programmatically or dynamically generated. So let's say, for example, you want to have something to call out maybe the worst performing regions, the ones where you should take an action on, or the best performing, or how do you perform that query? Now, we already color code this, but I could be using some other metric, or maybe there's something else that I want to call out as far as actionability or follow-up. So I'll show you how to do that. I've started on this lens over here. Now what this is I just picked something like annual revenue, the max of account annual revenue, saying, hey, if there is an open case and it's one of our large customers, maybe this is a state we want to pay attention to. And again, I'm grouping by state. So it's really easy to kind of just get what are the worst performers in this case. And what we'll do is we can kind of limit it to whatever number that we want to call out. Because obviously you don't want to call out all 50 states because that's just too much information overload. You need to focus on something. So let's go back here. I've now got 3 states selected again, and I'm actually going to clip this one more time and go back to my dashboard, and then let's take number 2 here, and we'll drop that onto my dashboard. Now that we have this, we're also going to go over here, and actually I don't even need all of these rows. I really want to do something like, let's say the top 3. You can just pick whatever number you want, but I'm going to say I want the top 3 worst case scenarios, top 3 worst performers, top 3 that whatever user should pay attention to. And if you have some filter in here, you could say, hey, there's some threshold where I may not want to return anything at all. Let's do this. So let's say for the max of annual account revenue. So for max of annual account revenue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I only want it if it's greater than 900. So all of these are greater than 900. So this is a way to just kind of trigger, if I have something, it's greater than this value, give me the first 3 of them, so we can highlight those in our dashboard. So again, I'm going to clip this, and I won't worry about the step name for right now. And let's go back to our dashboard. So I've clipped my new billing state 3 here. And what we want to do is we want to make this dynamic so that it's paying attention to that. So let's hit Command E. And then let's see if we can find our markers. Okay, so here are our markers again. And just to confirm, this is on chart 2. So we've got 3 markers. Now what we want to do though is, instead of having these be the static ones that I've selected, let's see if we can make these dynamic. So add a binding and cell, and then what we're going to need is the step name that we added. I think it was account billing state 3. We get static 1, account billing state 1. I think these are in reverse chronological order. So account billing state 3, we'll copy that and go right back to our markers. There. So paste that in dot selection, comma 0, and we're going to need the value. So remember, account billing state 3, we're actually pulling the max of annual revenue. So let's just copy this here and go right back up here. So now here we're going to do escape double quote max underscore account annual revenue, close that, and actually I think I just messed up there. What we actually want here is billing state, because we want the name of the state, not the value that this threshold is hit, but we want the actual name of the state. So let me make sure that billing state is, in fact, it's account.billing state. So we'll copy that. And paste right there. Okay, so now this is going to be dot as object. And actually, you know what I realized is this should be result and not selection. So this is a results binding, and we can go and highlight this whole thing. And now we're going to put this, instead of PA, we're going to put this string, same string but row 1, and instead of VA, we'll put that same string and row 2. So let's try this out. And there we go, we can already see. And when I preview this out, now you'll notice that that query is running. It's giving me my top 3 worst performers, which we can remember from here were Florida, PA, and Minnesota. And now we can see that I've got call attention out on Minnesota, PA, and Florida right there. So one last thing I wanted to show you is the real value of this dynamic is when you couple this with faceting. So let me put this, I'll make this map a little smaller. I'm going to add a list right here. And let's just stretch this out. And industry, let's try this out. So now for that industry, each industry that I select, right, we can see what are the worst performers, what are the things that I should be calling my attention to in that specific industry. So really easy that I can have this tailor focused for user or use case. What do I want to focus on today? And then see if there is any red flags, anything I should pay attention to. So that's the advanced dynamic set of chart markers, where my chart markers are set by some sort of query results. There's 3 different use cases for you, really ways to make these dashboards pop and say, pay attention to me with dynamic chart markers. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts. Thanks.